All right, for today's video, we're going to be taking a look at another sort of mid-2000s toy line that I had as a kid. And today we are taking a look at the incredible Crash Test Dummies. Now, there was actually an earlier toy line in the 1990s produced by Tyco. That was the original Incredible Crash Test Dummies line, which, if you're unfamiliar, is basically these guys, these lines of these little posable action figures that are meant to look like these sort of mannequins that they use in like crash test demos for cars and stuff like that. So the whole gimmick with these guys is they break apart in different ways and stuff like that. And this toy line existed in the 90s, and then eventually Mattel bought it in the early 2000s and released it as part of the Hot Wheels line. So these guys are officially the Hot Wheels Incredible Crash Test Dummies. So yeah, these are the Mattel guys, not the original ones from the 90s, but the 2000s versions. And yeah, basically one of the big changes that they did with these guys is now they all kind of break apart in different ways, kind of depending on their names and personalities, which is kind of neat. But yeah, the whole gimmick with these guys is, you know, you have these guys and then you got this button on their chest and then they all break apart. And yeah, it's like, oh, you know, they had cars, and I don't have any of the vehicles, but they came with like cars and stuff too that you basically, you know, roll around and crash them in and then see how they got dismembered in different ways, which is a little gruesome, but you know, it's a neat concept. And yeah, the here in front of me, these guys are the original four that Mattel did, and then eventually they did two more, and then some other fun stuff on the side. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't have any of the vehicles, and not all of these guys work anymore. You know, I had these as a kid, and the whole gimmick is that you're supposed to throw them about and crash them around. So as a result of that, sometimes they get real broken, not just like designed broken, which is kind of a bummer. You know, I've many times lost all the parts for these guys. Eventually, I was able to find them all and put them all back together, but they've some of them have seen better days. But yeah, from the original four here we have Crash. His gimmick is when you press this button, I don't even know if this works anymore. It's supposed to be like his arms, his legs, and his head come off. And that got his legs off, but and then they split in two like that. And it's supposed to be like these little pegs that the head are on kind of retract into the body, and make him fall apart like that. Unfortunately, mine does not work anymore. Gosh, as a kid, I broke it and it split in half, and I fixed it with masking tape, which is like that. And eventually, I'm probably going to try to like tear that off and like actually do some surgery on the inside to see if I can fix him, and then actually you know, just glue the piece back together so it doesn't have this ugly masking tape on. But you know, it is what it is. Had that as a kid, so that's kind of the condition that he's in. A little bit worse than some of the other ones, but yeah, and then you can just put him back together. He was always one that I always like lost a bunch of parts for, because the head kind of falls off pretty easy. But yeah, they also have limited articulation. For him, the head can rotate because it's just on that joint. The arms can rotate. It's got a bicep swivel, hinge elbow. It's got a below the wrist or below the elbow wrist swivel there. I'm just gonna then nothing at the waist. The legs can kick forward and back. Got a thigh swivel there. Bends about 90 at the knee, and that's about it. I don't think there's any rotation in the feet or anything like that. So yeah, not bad. Pretty basic posable action figure, but just enough to Jesus. He's kind of one of the worst ones in terms of keeping him together. And then this guy was Splice, who thankfully does still work and exactly how he should. I showed him off earlier. As you press the button and he splits in half and his head falls off. Kind of a neat mechanism. You know, it just like releases this little latch that is held in there. Articulation for him is more or less the same. His head can't rotate. I mean, it can rotate a little bit, but you see how the piece is connected in there. That just doesn't, it's not going to rotate all the way around. But the shoulders rotate, bicep swivel, hinge elbow, pretty much all their arms are the same. So I guess I shouldn't just go through that for everyone. And pretty much all the legs are the same too. Yeah, he's got exactly the same leg articulation as Crash. Just the only real difference is the head doesn't rotate, and that's it. This guy's name was Crunch, and I'm fairly certain he doesn't work. But what was supposed to happen with him, you can see he's got a kind of chipped collar up here, is that you press the button and his head sinks into his body like he's, you know, crunched into himself. And yeah, and then he's got a little lever on the back that is supposed to pull him back up, but yeah, that mechanism is another one that I don't know how I would take him apart, because he doesn't even have any like screws or anything holding him together. But yeah, he's really like the least functional of the lot anymore. And yeah, same exact articulation as the other guys. His head does rotate though as well on this little platform that it's on, which is cool. And then last but not least, we had Gyro, and his thing was you twist up his waist and his head like this. It's one of those spring mechanisms, and then you press the button there, and he goes. So he's just torn apart at the waist. All of his organs, I'm sure, are in terrible repair. But yeah, he's for articulation for him, his head can rotate, but again, it's kind of like tied to this mechanism. So you can get it in most every position, but it only really turns the one way. And same kind of thing with his waist is like, if you turn it, you're clicking it in motion, but if you turn it this way, it's free moving. So it's a little bit loose, which is kind of annoying, but that serves the gimmick. And then other than that, it's same exact articulation as the other three. So yeah, kind of a neat concept. I think that this skateboard probably came with Crash. I can't remember specifically, but they all have little holes on the bottom of their feet, so you can have them skateboard and then run into each other. And of course he survived that, the one that I was trying to get his head to fall off. But kind of a neat idea. It rolls okay. Got to give it some sort of wheels since it's with the Hot Wheels brand, which of course was more for the cars, but and then later in 2004, if I didn't say earlier, these guys were 2003, they released two more of them. And this was, what is his name? This guy is, sorry, I had to look that up. This guy's name is Papa. You can see that their names are all kind of, tied to their whole gimmick. And his thing was, his legs would fall off and his eyes would bulge out of his head, which is even more gruesome. He's probably my least favorite, even though he's one of the ones that still works, just because he sort of looks like a knockoff just because of how they did his head, and none of the rest of them have like the whites of their eyes, so his head looks like a little bit stranger, like he looks a little bit faker than the rest of them, and his head is made out of the same material as the body rather than the more like rubbery material that it is with the rest of them. So like when I got him like at a CVS or something, and I straight up thought it was a knockoff at the time, but nope, it's Mattel. He's official. Just looks a little weird compared to the other ones. And then this guy who I think fits in a little bit better, his name is Flex, and his thing was when you press his button, his body joints in half like that. Oh, for him, I should say, he's got same articulation as the rest of them, no head movement, but same at the arms and legs. And for Flex, his head can rotate, and otherwise the exact same articulation, nothing at the waist. So, they're all pretty much the same. Him, and him have head articulation, and he's got waist articulation, and otherwise they're all exactly the same. And then, they did some other fun things like these little Crash Test animal dummies, where they're pretty much just have a single joint to be like roadkill. Which again is kind of upsetting, but it's a fun little gimmick. But yeah, it's a neat little toy line. The one thing that I had the big problem with them as a kid is that, like, since you're sort of meant to throw them around and stuff, they're kind of prone to easily like breaking, just because like if you're a kid and you're told you're supposed to throw it around, like obviously you're going to test the limits of that, and that's how we have injuries like these two whose mechanisms no longer function. And then aside from that, the ones that like come apart, it's real easy to like lose all the bits for them. Thankfully I was able to find them again just by searching through my old bins of toys, but kind of a bummer. I'm sure I had other things, like I'm pretty sure something else came with these guys, but can't remember, don't have it anymore. But otherwise, they're a fun little toy line, especially if you're just having them standing on the shelf. Then once you've got all the parts, it's not an issue, but it does make collecting them a little bit more of a pain. I'd like to check out the original Crash Test Dummies at some point, because like I only learned through researching these guys that it was like a remake by Mattel. I didn't realize that there was a toy line that predated this. But yeah, pretty cool little line. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have the Mattel Hot Wheels 2003 Incredible Crash Test Dummies.